Hey guys, hey ladies, hey friends, hey foes. We just wanted to take a second to remind you that while we're okay swearing when little ears are listening, you might not be, and that's okay. So here's your chance to pause us and wait for nap time, or pop in your earbuds. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Me in the straight jacket. 'Cause I'm a criminal. I need some medication. I'm hearing voices. I'm making bad choices.
Welcome back to another episode of Done Playing by the Rules. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Jenelle.
And this is take 50 because we cannot get our words right today. So
Our lives
just
are
bear
hard.
with us. It's been crazy. We had a crazy windstorm last night. I was just telling Janelle, and my kids are devastated because it completely took out their fort. It looks like a mini tornado came through. Seriously. The fort isn't even salvageable. It has like a metal beam because it's like the fort and then connected to a swing set, and the swing set's metal, and it snapped the metal off, like snapped the bolt. The whole thing slid like a good 25 feet, and like all the wood pieces like broke when it fell, and it's a mess. And my kids have just been bawling all day.
They're so traumatized by
Oh.
stuff like this. Zach's going to be sad when I tell him.
I
But we
know.
had one of those too. We had like a shitty little play set, like on the ground. But and Zach was looking out the window, and a storm literally lifted it off the ground and just smashed it down onto the
Yes.
ground. And the whole thing like exploded in front of Zach's little
I don't
eyes. It was
know.
so traumatic.
I mean, this wind was so loud. At
wild
one point,
there.
I texted our neighbor, and she actually happened to not be home. And I was like, I was trying to do a Zoom call, and I couldn't even hear because the wind and rain were so loud. And it moved all of our patio furniture, and we have iron patio
Yeah, you guys
furniture.
have heavy stuff.
And it knocked it over. Our chairs were on the other side of our property, which is like a couple acres away. Our sandbox, everything, front porch patio was like in the bushes. I don't know what happened last
You
night,
guys
but-
get bad windstorms there. I've never seen anything like it.
And we were supposed to get the RV yesterday and put it in the driveway. And I just kept telling Brandon, I was like, I feel like something in my gut keeps saying, wait another day. And I was like, I did see a post that someone had posted that theirs tipped over in their driveway, even though it had the supports down. And I was like, maybe we should just leave it where it is because it's stored
I wonder if your
between
guys would've
two.
tipped over.
We 1,000% would have tipped over. I mean, our play set is like right there. and that
Heavy.
thing-
Your
yeah.
place set is like a legit big wooden structure.
Yeah. And we went to go check on it this morning, and my nerves, I was like, oh my gosh. Because we were supposed to leave this weekend, and my kids would have been extra devastated. So, and I
my
know we're
God.
very privileged, and I kept trying to remind my kids that. And then I was like, no, you're being like toxic, and just accept their
Toxic
hard
privilege.
feelings. Yeah. Because they were like crying, and I was like, well, you know, like our house is fine. Like we're really lucky. And then I was like, wait,
We're
this is
all
their little
alive.
world.
It is
Let
their
them
little
have their
world.
pity party. And so we've been
It'd be like if the
pity partying.
windstorm came over and exploded your computer and we lost all of
Right?
our podcast episodes. Like
Exactly.
you'd be sad, and Ezra would be like, it's fine. We still have
Yeah.
food to eat.
Exactly. You still have your phone or whatever.
Speaking of phones, uh-oh.
Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum. God, we're getting good at segues. We don't even
I
mean
know.
to. It's like we're
Right?
professionals. Today's episode is about screen time and relating to your kids and the pros and the cons and what we do and what others do. Our goal of this is to never, ever, 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 ever be harpy or judgy. Jenna has different approaches to screen time than I do. Certain parts of screens work better for my kids that don't work as good for her kids, and vice
Mhm.
versa. It's kind of like every unique family has like a different makeup. Every family is going to have a different screen time approach. All the articles that I've seen is about managing it as a family and communicating about it. And 2 points that we wanted to make right off the bat is the number one question people ask is, if I remove screen time, what do I do instead to entertain my children? And the answer is nothing. And we will go into that further. And then the second part is, I don't always love to say there's seasons, but there is. Yeah, my kids have gone through things where like someone has surgery. When I had COVID, I had to take a 2 to 4 hour nap every day. And there was a lot of screen time, and you can always detox and come back. So if you get in a stage where you're over screen timing, please don't feel like, oh my God, I can never come back. And also, if you need to add some screen time for a while for whatever reason, don't knock yourself for it because you can always come back.
So do you want to share where you're at and where you've been with screen time?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, honestly, when Zach was a baby, screen time wasn't as big of a deal because it was just like we would watch those like little cartoons together in the morning. Sprout was the channel I think it
Mm,
was on, and it was like little baby educational, like cute little like Teletubby type shows. We'd watch stuff like that. When Zach was 18 months, he broke his femur and he was in a like half body cast for a month, and that was unlimited screen time. Then we've been able to pull away, and then screen time is still very limited in our house. But like I said, when I had COVID, it was basically like every day I napped for 2 to 4 hours and they got to watch one or two movies. Certain things don't bother them as much as other things. Zach is very sensitive to screen based video games. So
mm.
we limit that like crazy because it just isn't a good fit for him. And that's another thing they talk about in a lot of the articles and research we read is if they're not quite mature enough to understand the differences. Like, I don't know that Zach understands that like killing something in Minecraft is different than killing something in the real
Mm.
world. And so that's just not a place we're super comfortable at yet. But right now, while I'm recording, they have a list downstairs of educational programs they're allowed to watch on Amazon Prime, and they can choose from those. And so educational programming takes precedent, but we also do like family movie night, which is whatever trash we want to do. And it switches back and forth when we're in like some chaotic modes. Like my kids got to watch their iPads. Mikey didn't as much, but Zach watched his iPad the whole drive from Virginia to here. We always say
Mhm.
no iPads or screens in the car if it's under 2 hours. But I mean, everything wiggles around over here.
You said you limit screen time. So what does that mean to you? Like, is there a time limit or is it just
Yeah.
like what?
So our goal every day is basically none. And
Okay.
so we wake up with that as our goal. But they do yoga on a screen every day. If we have like an exceptionally good day, we will sit down as a family and watch like an episode of The Floor is Lava or an episode of The Great British Bake Off. They don't have access to their own iPads. They have iPads for each of them, but they're for like flying only and long car rides. They don't have cell phones. They don't have screens in their rooms. I don't plan to ever do screens in their rooms, even though I grew up with a TV in my room and
Mm.
watched MASH every night when I went to bed. Oh God, MASH was so good. So that would be considered limited. There's no
Okay.
screen time, limited, and then there's unlimited, which people also say has its pros. So I'm
Mhm.
interested to talk more about that too.
Definitely. So we have ebbed and flowed as seasons have changed. Like we are very seasonal screen time people. So when it first started out, when my son was really small, he was obsessed with like Thomas the Train. And so we would watch
Mhm.
that and Curious George. And he was
Mhm.
fine with watching them. And I didn't see any negativity or repercussions with it. I think his first exposure was like at my mom's house. She had cable and we happened to turn something on and he was like, ah. And
Mhm.
I used it to get things done when he was small, a stay at home mom, like my husband wasn't at home. And to clean the house or to shower or anything like that, he just wanted to be with me 24/7. So I would put him in our room in front of the TV. And I personally see nothing wrong with that.
I agree.
As he got older, we started noticing more behavior ramifications from screens. So when I had my daughter, we would wake up and put the TV on. My daughter slept in our room when she was super small, like in a little like pack and play. So he would wake up and crawl in bed with me and I would continue to lay there and I would turn the TV on for him while my daughter continued to sleep. And then once she got up, I would, feed her and then we'd go downstairs and start our day. And then he started getting a little older and we saw some meltdowns anytime we had to turn the TV off. So even in the mornings. Also, when we turned the TV off, he was insanely energetic and not in a good way. Like couldn't listen, almost borderline aggressive, bouncing off the walls, doing things that he normally wouldn't do. And we were
Yeah.
just kind of like, what is this? And so this is around 3.5 going on 4. That continued. And then we started preschool and my daughter would sleep even when she was like 18 months till 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning if we let her. And so it was so easy for me to just put him in front of the TV. And then we started having some attention issues at school. So I was like, okay, let's do our part. And so we changed our diet and we cut out screens. And Jenelle and I have talked about screen detox before, and it can be a bitch, honestly. And we'll get
Mhm.
into that a little bit more. And so now my kids, they do maybe once every month, every 2 months, a movie or a show that they both agree on. They don't really ask for it. Every now and then they'll say, can we have a movie night? And we really have to focus on like when that is. Like we have to do it early enough so that they're not staying up late. And we just have to be really intentional. And the stuff they want to watch is also not the best. It's mostly like Godzilla. So a lot of action, very stimulating. So we have to make sure it's not too close to bed. If I was like, let's watch an educational thing, they might say, okay, but that's not what they really want. Let's be honest. And we have iPads. And recently my kids have said, so one of our friends has started calling the kids on their iPad, and our iPads are always plugged in our office. And so for like 4 nights, we were hearing this sound at dinner and we were like, what is that? And finally we figured out it was one of the little kids calling Ezra on his iPad.
Oh.
And so we did let him answer it once we finally figured it out. And he was so excited to talk and he handled it really well. And we're like, you need to hang up. And so we told him he handled it really well. So he is allowed to earn iPad time. They have to, my kids have checklists in the morning and they have to get 5 checks and then they get iPad time, and they choose. They can use it to call friends, they can use it for Messenger, or they can use it to play games, and they're in charge of that. My son has handled it really well, but now we're in the season with my daughter to where we say time's up and it's a meltdown. So, and if you guys have kids and you've tried to either detox or limit screens, or even just say it's the end of the day and turn off the screen, you know what we're talking about. So,
oh my gosh, yes.
I do have on our summer list to introduce more screens, because one of the benefits of screens is our world is a very technology driven world. And my son doesn't know how to type and doesn't know how to navigate a computer. And that is a downfall, because when he goes back to school, they use Chromebooks. And he's not going to know how to navigate that or have the muscle built up to use a mouse. You know how it takes a certain skill to use a mouse. It's not like you can just
I didn't
like
even think about
use
that.
it.
We don't even have a mouse in this whole entire house. I don't think. I don't even know
What do you have,
what
like
a mouse is.
A
We all just have
touchpad?
laptops. Yeah.
Yeah. And so even that, and so that is on our list, but I'm saving it for summer because I think it will be a little bit of a distraction for him.
Oh, that's a really good
where we're
idea. I
at.
didn't think about the mouse part, because that is important. And I've talked to the kids
Yeah.
about, like, we practice with my computer a little bit. Zach's allowed to type things once in a while. Mikey likes to type on it. Something that's important to me is my phone is my property. And I know that not everybody, like a lot of people are fine, like handing your phone over to your kids. I've always said my phone is my property. You have an iPad, and I have 2 educational games on my phone. So if I have a doctor's appointment, they know that they can play Khan Academy Kids, or there's some like reading one that they do. Khan Academy Kids is as educational as it gets. Like, we have started certain sections of homeschooling, and Zach's been like, I already did this on Khan Academy Kids. Oh, homophones. I was like, what's a homophone? And he's like, oh, I already did it on Khan Academy Kids, you know, like 222. And I was like, oh, okay. So this is totally acceptable. I think that developing your own set of family rules, and that's just something that comes from my belief in sharing, is we don't force sharing either. When I was growing up, you were forced to share things, share your toys, share with this person, give them a turn. And we don't force that. The way I've interpreted it is like, you wouldn't say like, I want to turn with your computer and walk up to your friend and take their computer out of their hand. So my phone is my phone unless we have a situation like I have a chiropractor appointment or I have a doctor's appointment, but like this morning I had a telehealth on the phone, and I was like, you guys are going to go in and clean up your toy room. And then maybe later we can earn family TV time. And we try to make it something that we all watch together. And that's a lot that they talk about in the research too, is making it a family event, not just plopping kids in front of the TV, but like, we all like watching The Floor is Lava and voting. And we all like watching Great British Bake Off and voting. And so making it a family affair is a lot different than just passive screen time.
That's true. And I will say, I am all for whatever screen time you and your family do, because I have done it. I have done it where
oh my God,
we've watched so much TV as a family, or not as a family, just in our household. And my husband and I even, I'm trying to think, it was definitely before the pandemic, and we would bring iPads for our kids about once a month and set them up at the dinner table, and we would have a date night like that. and our kids would be silent and just eat their pasta. And
It's so
it was,
glorious.
and I was like, you know what? Like, I don't care if anyone judges or anything. And we were going to like nice restaurants too. So we would put headphones on them and we were like, let's have a date night. And it was actually really fun. And so,
I don't bat an eye at anybody else doing whatever they have to do to survive. I just, for our family, certain parts of screen time, especially like Roblox and Minecraft, have been a very tough thing to navigate with Zach because he is so drawn to them. I actually yesterday, first teenager moment, I kept noticing that my iPad was moved in the morning. And I was like, why is this moved every morning? And I was like, Zach knows in our family, if you tell a lie, you get in trouble. If you tell the truth, you won't get in trouble. And I was like, have you been getting up before me and Dad and playing Roblox? And he was like, yes. And so then we had like 3 or 4 days of this. And I finally yesterday had to put a lock on my iPad, and I've never had to lock any device in our house. And Zach cried for an hour.
Yeah.
And I felt awful. And I was just watching
Right.
him and I was like thinking how I would feel because he thought he had this sweet ass system set up where no one would know and he wasn't hurting anyone. And
Yeah.
what's the harm? And I like shut it down and put a lock on something. And so I fully took away his access to it. And Josh and I have talked to him about that. Like he's like, all my friends get to use it unlimited. And I said, well, your friends are 10 and 11, honey. You're 7. Like you're not in the same place mentally. I'm also not their mom. I always say I'm not their mom. I'm not their mom. But they're older and he's just not, he doesn't have the brain maturity yet to regulate things.
Yeah. And who knows what their parents do. Parents who work from home or are busier or have other things or multiple children, like you do what you got to do.
For
as
sure.
well as Jenelle and I have talked about our oldest boys have almost an addicting behavior towards video games more than movies. And it's like my son, we did let him play video games. We got a PlayStation or something at the beginning of the pandemic. And we were like, this will be a fun little family activity. Oh, that fucking backfired. When I say a meltdown from TV was bad, this was atrocious. It's all he could think about, all he could talk about. He couldn't focus when we were doing school because he was playing the games in his head. I don't know what it was about video games. And it didn't matter what video game it was. iPad, anything. And he can handle the iPad games a little better now, but video games, we just cannot do them at this stage.
It's so bad,
so
Zach. So Zach's off Minecraft. He's allowed to play Roblox for 30 minutes. And I usually say it's 30, but give him an hour. If he has if he has 4 good days of school a week, he earns it on Friday. And or if he has like a friend that's like, hey, Zach, do you want to play at this? If it's a social interaction, we'll give him a bonus. If he were to go, he's off Minecraft. He's only allowed on Roblox now. If he were to be given an hour on Minecraft, he would literally speak of nothing else for the remainder of the week. There's been so many times where I've said to him, okay, honey, I've been sitting next to you for 25 minutes now and you've talked about nothing but Minecraft. Like, I want to change the subject. And he like can't. And that's something that Josh told me. Josh is like, his brain just isn't there yet to like conceptualize that this is a video game and to like put it in a box and put it on the shelf. Like he's just too immersed in the feeling of it.
And we struggle with ADHD in our house, and that is just too stimulating for him. Anything out of the ordinary, actually anything is pretty much stimulating for my son. And so add in all of that. And we're going to talk mostly just about screens in general, but if you want more insight into especially boys and video games specifically, the book Boys Adrift, which we've talked about on here before, Jenelle and I read it and it's wonderful. They talk a lot about video games and the impacts it can have.
It's great in the fact that like my husband will often say like, well, I played video games all the time growing up and I'm fine. And video games, when you read the book, aren't the same anymore. It's not Zelda. They're now designed to like fire your serotonin in your brain to like get you addicted. And like, they're not the same cup of tea as when 40 years ago when my husband was playing. It's a whole different landscape. And even we noticed that in Minecraft, the way that I've read articles about the way Minecraft flashes and stuff is stimulating to the pleasure centers in your brain. That's not what was happening when we were playing Super Mario Bros. With the blowout disc when we were a kid.
Exactly. And so if you decide that you want to limit screens or quit screens or whatever it may be, Jenelle and I call it a screen detox. It's hard. The first thing I would say is don't just, go cold turkey. Don't just cut out screens. Do it slowly and say, where can we implement screens in our life that would be the most beneficial to our family? Whether that's you need to get stuff done or whether it's you have kids that wake up at different times in the morning or
Mhm.
whatever it may be, or if you want to use them for appointments only or to build in special times. But doing it all at once is going to be hard on everyone, especially the parents. You have to reschedule your routine. That was the biggest game changer for
Yeah.
us. I'm also at a privileged age where my kids are very independent. And I know that. If I had a baby in the house, it would probably be different, or a toddler. Well, I guess I kind of have a toddler. She's just turned 4. She is a very independent child because people are always like, what do you do in the mornings? And I remember being at that stage of thinking, well, what do people do in the mornings? Because even growing up, like you wake up, you watch TV, you lay in your parents' bed and you watch Saturday morning cartoons or whatever it may be. So my kids wake up and sometimes they'll just stay upstairs and play. Sometimes they don't even come downstairs. A lot of times my daughter will come downstairs and just lay with us, and we tell them 7 o'clock is when everyone gets going. My kids know that, and they have like little alarm clocks that turn green. And then they have the choice. We can do breakfast right away or they can play, and they usually pick to play. Now that it's nice outside, and even in the winter, my kids are outside kids. They love to go outside first thing in the morning. And there were times at the beginning where they're like, well, what do we do? It's a completely different thing. And so you either need to supplement it, like, okay, we're going to read books. I remember reading books early in the mornings with my kids, or even bringing out a tote of toys that they haven't seen in a while, or magnet tiles or something they can build, or start breakfast right away. You have to fill that time that you had all that TV time with something, because your kids are going to be a little lost puppy dogs, like not
They're
knowing
just
what to
trying,
do.
yeah, they are. And I was gonna say, you're a lot nicer mom than me. See, when we screen detox, I cut it cold turkey.
You did? Yeah.
Every time, yeah, because I say like, I love you. We're not at a good place with screens right now. I'm seeing it negatively affect your behavior. I'm seeing it negatively affect your mood. And I think it's just time that we all take a break. And so the TV is not going to come on. Yeah, he lost Roblox for a month last month and just got it back. And like, I will cut things for a month. And I also will do what you do. And like, so I'll cut screens cold turkey, but then I will help them reestablish their regular routine, like you said. So like, you can't cut screens cold turkey and then also be like, I don't know, find something to do. We're going to pull out a toy bin that they haven't seen in a while. And we also keep, which people hate, they have toys in each of their bedrooms. They have a toy room on the main floor and they have toys in the basement. And so we rotate around the house because we are in a colder climate. Yesterday it snowed, blowing, blistering snow for the entire day. And today it's sunny and snowy. We can't always be outside, and so we'll rotate through the house. And so in the morning, they'll sit upstairs and they'll play toys in their room, and they have different Legos up there, and then they come down here and there's different areas of toys, and they have a puzzle and they have a Lego area. And so my house always looks like there's a lot of kids here for only 2 of them. But I will cut screens cold turkey because I just feel like the withdrawal is shorter for my children if I cut them cold turkey. But it's let's go outside and read. And then they get bored of reading, and then they're like, oh, I found a stick that I want to hit a tree with for a little while. And so you have to like give them some gentle guidance back into like what the new program is going to be. And you have to do it for yourself too. Like you're not gonna be able to sit on your phone as much as you want while you're retraining them also.
And if you do, they'll call you out on it. We didn't mean to cut out screens, honestly. Like we noticed we couldn't do it.
If it worked for us, I would love it.
Exactly. Like we noticed we couldn't do it before school. And so that's where we started restructuring. And then, especially if your kids are in regular school or preschool, by the time you get home from that and do lunch, or if it's later in the day, snack time, your day just goes. So there was no time for screens. So we're like, okay, well, we'll do it on like Saturdays. Well, my kids got eventually so used to the routine of just getting up and playing that Saturday TV, that Sunday TV just disappeared. And then we love being outside. And so, my husband and I were like, well, let's go do projects. Let's go do stuff. And the screens just kind of disappeared. Then we saw the positive impact with my son. And now anytime we do a screen, we do see the repercussions of it. And it's gotten better as he's gotten older. Like now that he's, they're 7.5, he's able to manage it a little better. But I can definitely see he watched a little too much one weekend at grandma's, and I saw the repercussions hardcore. And we didn't even know he had watched TV at first. And then finally we're like, this behavior is very
indicative
consistent with
of
how, And so we finally found out that he had, and that was a fun homeschool week. But yeah.
It's so tough. And so here's my other question for you. Is it a value that you're going to pass on to Peyton? Is it a family value now? Because Mikey and Zach respond very differently.
I've never been a huge screen person. I actually dated a guy and he watched so much TV that it was a huge turnoff. And I was like, don't you just want to go do stuff? Like, and trust me, I have those days where I'm like, I'm done. I'm turning on Netflix. And my husband and I watch TV at night. But it's not something that is really important or a forefront in our family. And so I think that's just going to be how our family is. I feel better when I don't watch screens all day, and I just feel more fulfilled when that's just me personally. Like if I'm outside gardening and then working out and then doing a project or going hiking, like I love those type of days and I live for those type of days. And so I think that's just how we're going to be. I'm also not the mom that's like, oh, we're anti-screens. Like if we go to someone's house and they're watching TV, my kids are going to sit down and watch TV with them.
Yes,
like, we're going to do it all together. I know Ezra spent the night at your house and you guys watched a movie and that was like the most special thing to him. And again, it was like that bonding experience. And that's what our boys wanted to do. There's been times where I know your son came to my house and I never let my kids have their iPad, like I said. And Zach had brought his. And so I let them have a little iPad time. Like that was special to them. And so I'm not like, no, we're not going to.
Jenna shows up at everyone's house and throws a hammer through everyone's big screen TV and was like, ECG or what are the electromagnetic energy is bad. No. And I also like, we are not in the throes of survival either. There's so many different seasons of life if we had a baby or a toddler. And honestly, like, I remember those days of snuggling in bed and waiting for the baby to wake up while you're snuggling with the big kid watching cartoons. I wouldn't trade those memories for anything.
Or nursing the little baby and it's just
the other one's like giggling at like silly Thomas the Train. Oh, it's so cute.
It's so special.
It is just, as Zach gets older, his tendency to like become hyper attached to things just makes it harder for him. And I don't know that it's a great fit, but like when he goes to school, they are on Chromebooks. And so that'll be something that he has to get used to. But another thing that I thought was really interesting, and I learned this when Zach was really young, is that fast-paced shows are more problematic than slow-paced shows. And I was shocked because I remember being in Zach's ECFE, which is like early childhood family education in Minnesota. And they said Sesame Street is actually not great for young kids because it's too fast-paced. It switches between storylines like every 30 to 90 seconds. And they were like, it's actually not a good show for young children. And we all grew up on that. And I was like, interesting. So these shows that are clicking through things, it's better to have like a long, drawn-out story that they have to follow. So that's a big part of this, is not necessarily screen time, the word time, quote unquote. It is screen quality that is more important.
Yeah.
So,
and we touched on that on our OT episode with Elizabeth.
Yes.
And I think that's also a wonderful tool if you want to have more screens in your life. Just make sure you're at least implementing some kind of educational thing so it's not constantly stimulating. Because one thing that I did notice that we kind of messed up on is when we would go out to eat, we would bring an iPad, because we kind of got into that habit. And it was so much easier because my daughter didn't watch it. She would just kind of hang out with us and chill or do whatever. My son could not sit still at a restaurant. And so going out to eat with him was so difficult. I mean, even if he was, quote, in his seat, he's standing up and basically leaning over the table, or he's so quick that he's knocking drinks over. He just could not sit still. So we would just give him the screen and he could sit still through the whole meal.
Oh, so nice.
But then he never got to work on the skill of actually sitting at the table. And we didn't have the opportunity to work through that with him. So then when we would have family dinner, it ended up me always yelling because he's crawling under the table and he's messing with everyone else and he's getting up and he's running around and then he's choking on food, and it was a disaster. And honestly, finally in the last probably like 6 months, he is able to sit through a meal. And my grandma was like, wow. But it took us 3 years for him to sit through a meal of actually trying strategies and working on them. It was not easy. And again,
it's not fun and it's not easy.
No, that's situational. My daughter has almost always been able to sit through a meal. She's a little more difficult now that she's actually older. She's just in that really like squirmy age. But yeah, it was
yes.
completely different.
And this changes as your children age too. So we all are aware of like the American Pediatric Association's recommendations, which have changed in the last couple of years. It used
What
to be
are
no
they? Do you
screen.
know?
Yeah, it used to be no screen time under 2, and now it is. Okay, so until 18 months, limit it to video chatting with parents out of town or adults that are far
Oh,
away
interesting.
I know, remember it used to be nothing under 2. Now it's 18 to 24 months screen time should be limited to watching educational programming with a caregiver. Children 2 to 5, limit non-educational screen time to 1 hour per weekday and 3 hours on weekend days. 6 and older, encourage healthy habits and limit activities that include screens. And then turn off all screens during family meals and outings. Learn about the use of parental control. Avoid using screens as pacifiers, babysitters, or tantrum stoppers. And turn off screens and remove from bedrooms 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime. It
Okay,
has
I
changed.
disagree with the babysitter part. Okay, don't use it for a temper tantrum.
A girlfriend
maybe.
needs a babysitter once in a while.
Exactly. Even one of my most crunchy granola friends used screens with her oldest, and she used it one so she could get stuff done, or two when after she had her baby so that she could spend one-on-one time with her baby and nursing her baby. And had that like quality bonding time, because if not, her toddler is running around and climbing on her and mom, I want this. And she felt like she never got to actually sit there and nurse her baby. And I was like, I've never even thought of that. Your second baby, they're just like hooked on or sucking on the bottle, and you don't get that quality time because you're watching your toddler.
You're
And so
chasing a
I was
toddler
like,
with somebody like hanging off your boob, and you're like
Yes.
swatting things out of a toddler's hand. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally different. And trashy restaurant alert. Josh hates my love of chain restaurants. We go to Olive Garden sometimes because they have these little iPads on the table, and they have a game called like Zombies versus Plants, and the zombies have to like fight the plants. My kids love it. I'll be like, Josh, date night at Olive Garden, because they love the game so much that we actually had to talk to each other, and he's always like, I can't believe we're having date night at Olive Garden. And I'm like, I'm sorry, like we don't have a babysitter, and I needed to talk to you for an hour if it's something important. Plus it's breadsticks. So I mean, it's a win-win for everyone, and you can't get the game anywhere else. So Olive Garden, if you want to sell me the rights to Plants
I think you
versus
can.
Zombies.
I remember Brandon having it on his phone. I think it's Plants versus Zombies. I think.
My God, they live for it. Anyway, so
But don't tell them that secret, because then they won't want to go.
Why would I? Because then I can't go to Olive Garden and eat unlimited breadsticks. No. Yeah. For those of you with older kids, it changes through the stages too. So when we get into teenagers, we're talking about, instead of screen time and screen quality, we're talking about digital literacy, which means encourage your child to think critically about what they see on their screens. Ask your child to consider whether everything on the internet is accurate. Does your child know how to tell if a website is trustworthy? Help your child understand that media is made by humans with points of view, which I think is really interesting. And explain that many types of technology collect data and send users ads to make money off of them, which I think is going to be a really interesting conversation to have with our kids. And then it goes into teenagers and teaching appropriate behaviors, because they're going to be 18 soon. They can do whatever they want, and they can go make an OnlyFans and be richer than us. So but it says, explaining to your teens, what is sexting? What is cyberbullying? Do not mince words. Is it ever appropriate to share personal information?
If your kid has an iPad, you already have to talk about that with your young kids, because they can get into these little chat rooms, or adults can get into these little kid chat rooms, or connect on, and Jenelle uses I think it's like Facebook Messenger for our kids to chat when they have time. And that one, the parents control through their account, which I like. So I have to approve people for my son. Like even when the neighbor girl was calling, I had to approve that contact for her to even be able to call him.
And then I also like, because if somebody calls Zach, it'll ring on my phone, because he doesn't have like his own account.
Oh,
and
nice.
So sometimes I'll answer it. I'll be like, Zach's mom here. How can I direct your call? Like, I'm already that lady. But that article's from the Mayo Clinic, and I'll share them. And then we also have the screen time, which is basically what we've already covered. Set a good example with your own safe and healthy screen habits. Josh and I call it, because we're big rap aficionados, walk it like I talk it, meaning like you can't say no screens at the table and then both of us be on our phones at the table. So
Or
It's
even
hard.
being secretive. Like, I believe that, your phone is your personal property, but if you need to do something that you can't be telling your kids or they can't see, then you need to wait until they're in bed. Even if you're on Instagram and you don't want your kids seeing it, like, you can't be hiding that because that's teaching them unhealthy habits and that screens are secretive. And if you want to have that open line of communication,
Oh, I didn't even think
then
about that.
it's a whole other thing.
Well, I was
So-
hiding the TikTok you sent me about vaginas from my kids yesterday. They're like, "What are you laughing at?" And I was like, "Nothing." And I was just like cackling. And then I sent it to all my friends, and they were like, "I'm glad I didn't open that at my daughter's gymnastics class." And I was like, "Me too."
Oh, I wish you did.
I was like, I figured since it said vagina on the first screen, you maybe would
Right.
know it wasn't safe.
And so if you're a person that doesn't do screens, just remember that everyone is in a certain stage of their life, and what works for you doesn't mean that it doesn't work for everyone. A lot of people I know don't do screens, especially that I knew when my kids were younger. And I always felt judged because we did do screens at the time. And like I said, that's not what led us not to do them. It's actually a few years later that we decided not to. So just kind of watch how you talk about it. Now it's all out in the world, I guess, but I don't tell people that we don't do screens because it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't
like
matter.
if somebody
It's
is
like
talking,
telling somebody that, like, hey, did you know that I have really light body hair on my legs? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
No.
It's a humble. It's not a humble
Yeah.
brag. Like, nobody cares.
right? And so if somebody's talking about a show, like a kid's show, like, oh, have you seen? What was somebody talking about the other day? Bluey. And I was like, no, what's that? Like, I don't say like, oh, well, we don't do
I've heard that's a
screens.
hard no. I've heard you should avoid that harder than you should avoid Kylie.
Really?
Just FYI. I've never seen Bluey either, but
I hadn't either. But her daughter, I guess, was having or wanted a gift that was for her birthday, something from that. And so I could have easily been like, oh, no, we don't do screens. I was like, oh, no, I haven't heard that. What is it? So if you are anti-screen or screen limit or whatever, just keep an open mind. And if you're a screen family, then own it.
And I love that. I
will
was going to
say-
say I have the opposite experience. More people than not I know have children that are able to self-regulate and have unlimited screen time, and their children can take it or leave it. Like, I'll be over at my girlfriend's house and she'll have her kid will have his iPad out, and then he'll just set it down and be like, so anyways,
Yes.
my kid would never fucking do that, so I can't do it. My kid would literally die of dehydration and pee in his pants before he put down a screen. And so there's definitely like kids that are able to self-regulate, and God, I wish I had that. I have no judgment because I wish I was you.
Yes. Well, and so here's some pros of screen time. And that is one, is that kid could have learned how to set boundaries and self-regulation. My child is not there yet. He cannot self-regulate. I think with more practice, he could, but we're just not at that stage right now. One that Jenelle touched on is screen time is educational. It can be. It can be. My daughter still doesn't know her ABCs. I think if I gave her an iPad and it was catchy and they sang it and there were visuals, I think she could pick it up very quickly. She is a visual kid. And so there are definite pros. And if you're watching what they're using, and especially the apps where they have to interact, I think that those can be very educational and beneficial. If your kids are in school or just in general in life, like I mentioned before, they're going to have to know how to use technology. Emails, text message, video calls, especially nowadays, creating assignments. I know one of the standards in Virginia talks about specifically technology and using it to type and to write and to organize ideas. And we have not met that standard. It's on our list. And these are things that your kids need to know. Your kid's not going to get hired if they can't figure out how to use any kind of technology.
They can't turn on a computer. My kid could not turn on a computer if he needed to right now.
Yeah. There is some research that children who struggle with writing, technology screens can lead them to improve their writing skills, not in terms of handwriting, but actual writing skills, because a keyboard is easier for a lot of kids, especially if they have any kind of fine motor issues. And so having access to them, or it might be more encouraging. Write me 2 sentences, type me 2 sentences about your science project is going to be more enticing than a pen and paper, especially if you have a reluctant writer. And then the last tip that I read that I thought was really good is that it can lead to responsible children, which we kind of touched on as well. You can have your kid create a checklist, or you can just do a verbal checklist. And instead of just telling your kid, like, do your chores, pick up your room, do your homework, brush your teeth, all of that, if you have a little checklist, they have to be in charge. So they're like, can I play on my iPad? all you have to say is, did you do your checklist? Some good examples were read for 20 minutes, do your homework, check your room to make sure it's clean, have your dirty clothes put away. And then something that I liked was that for 40 minutes, they at least created, build, or did some kind of physical activity. And I liked adding that in there
That's
too. Because
amazing.
it also shows them like, okay, here's our priorities, and now screen is down here. And so once you meet all of these, then okay. And so it's teaching your kids kind of to set those responsibilities and those priorities. And so you can make this list however you want, and your kid's in charge. So,
and it's not rewarding them for being quote unquote good or bad, which is another thing that I don't like to tie any reward to being like good or bad. And my kid's chore chart every week earns them money, and Zach earns screen time by having 4 constructive days of school every week, because our homeschool program is 4 days a week. And so
does he have like a checklist, or is it like at the end of the day you're like, okay, today was a good day,
a great day? Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and it's on his regular chore chart that he makes allowance for. And so he knows if he has 4 good days of school, it'll be on his chore chart. So if he screws up one day, we just say, okay, we just start over tomorrow. We don't make a big thing about it. So his screen day doesn't always fall on the same time. We have to earn money to buy things. So they are learning about earning, and they are learning about like what the priorities are. Like school is our priority, moving our body is our priority. Then we talk about screens. We don't talk about wake up and like, can I watch something? Can I do this? Even though sometimes on Saturdays I'm like, yes, you can watch something, because oh my God, you guys ask so many questions.
Yeah.
There's also been reports that I saw too that said researchers found children who spend 1 to 2 hours daily watching television or using digital devices had higher levels of social and emotional well-being versus those who reported no screen time. The only caveat to that is when I went and tried to, I'm very big on like fact checking our stories. When I went and did the research on where this came from, it is worth noting that the data here is based on subjective reporting of the caregivers. So this is not like a scientific experiment. There was 35,000 American children involved in this study. So it's not a small scale study. However, the reporting mechanism isn't as high as I would like. Technology is not going away. We're not going to remove it. This isn't a phase. Like,
no,
we are going to be in technology forever. And so the kids do have to learn how to use it, but they also don't need to be rushed into full unadulterated, at my house at least.
Well, and I get the comment like, it's so much more work to not do screens. And I say, okay, like, I don't mean this in a rude way, but that's an opinion, because in our experience, it's the opposite, because we had so many more behavior issues.
God, for sure.
All the time. With my son, it was so much harder with screens. And so once we figured out our schedule and we did that detox and we adjusted, it's like life is actually so much easier for us.
And
honestly.
that's what you have to weigh in your own family. This is an experiment. If you decide to take away screens for 2 weeks and it makes your life substantially harder and everybody's miserable, then go right back.
Yeah, question.
What's your question?
We watched 2 episodes of a smart show. Can we watch 1 episode of a not smart show?
I hope you're recording this for the what smart shows did you watch?
2 Wild Crap.
And what not smart show are you going to watch?
I don't know.
Not anything violent. No Transformers.
No.
Did you hear him? Hi, Miss Jenna. She says hi.
Going back to the discernment part, that's mostly about picking and choosing appropriate things and what to do when you come across inappropriate things. They're going to come across things that are inappropriate, even on YouTube Kids. There have been things that have been snuck in there, and creepy ass people on the internet post stuff that gets through the filters. And so if you're not teaching your kids what to do when they come across that, then they're really not that safe on the internet. And so I think we
honestly, my own kids
are
my own kids are a good example of this, because they've never had so much unadult monitored internet time. And then when they go over to their friends, they're watching kids YouTube. And then I don't know if anybody's familiar with Granny, but there's like this mean old spooky witch lady that like was in one of the, I guess she's like a character in Minecraft or Roblox. And Zach was like, who's Granny? Because his friend was like, Zach, don't look, this is too scary, and turned it off, because that kid has had more modulating and regulation with this. So he said, Zach, don't look, and turned it off. And then Zach was like, well, Mom, who's Granny? Can I look it up? And like, My kids have no idea. So that is something that we do need to work on. We're at the stage now where I have an almost 8-year-old that does need to learn some internet safety. Like when something
my
gets too
son-
scary, look away or turn it
Right.
off. You don't just sit and watch
And tell
it.
an adult. That's our thing. Like my son,
Yes.
when he was 5, he was on like some kind of like YouTube or something on his iPad, which is supposed to have filters. And he stumbled on this thing called Siren Head. And it's actually really creepy because I looked it up and he somehow kept stumbling upon it. And
Look at this. I'm going to show you. This is Granny.
Google Siren Head. That is creepy.
I'm too scared now. Siren Head might be worse. We'll do a vote on the Instagram page on Granny versus Siren Head. Which of us failed our child?
Watch it in a video.
No,
It
I'm
is-
going to ask Zach if he knows what it is.
It's creepy. And I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how that got on there. And so we had to teach him like what to do when this pops up. And
We
like,
have to work together to teach them because that stuff wasn't. We were playing Oregon Trail in a closed circuit system growing up. And now these guys are like playing with their neighborhood friends. Like I'll hear Zach being like yelling at the neighbor kid, like, let me in. And he's like, no, close the door. And like they're playing a game together. Yeah, that Roblox, you can play with your friends and build things together and they'll sit next to each other and play it together. And I love the collaboration and it does teach like social interaction and planning. Like they plan little battles and stuff. So there are really great parts of technology, but there's some spooky like landmines here that we don't know about because we're old. We're old as hell.
And we don't think like that. Like, oh, I want to get on this kid's website and insert X, Y, and Z into it.
Sneak in something spooky to give the kids nightmares.
Yes. So do your research. And if you have any questions about limiting screens or becoming screen free, or if you have any extra pros you want us to include, we're always for that. And you do you.
I would love to have someone on that or talk to someone that has unlimited screen time and hear how it's worked for you and how your kids have learned to regulate it. And I find that to be super interesting because I don't know if I'll ever have that.
Oh, kids, man. So with that,
they're exhausting.
Call your therapist
and take your meds.